Hi.
Hi.
Welcome to the show, Dan Dodd. Fun fact, you are my first guest.
I'm so excited to be doing this with you. We kind of had a crazy start to our journey, and
Yeah.
here we are now, years
Yeah.
later.
So before we get into all of that, like our time together, why don't you start by telling the listeners who you are and what your business is?
So, I am Daniel Dodd. I am the owner of TriState Barbell, which is a training company that started back in about 2019.
Yeah.
I'm also a competitive weightlifter. So, my foundation started in CrossFit and then found my way into weightlifting.
Sure.
I'm also an educator, so that kind of like pushed my passion into also coaching. And then, we took the business of myself just taking a couple athletes into now what's a roster of, 50, 60 athletes, five
Yeah.
coaches, multiple teams that we work with, high schools and youth programs starting soon.
Yeah, you just guys like blew up in the last couple years. It's been really beautiful to watch.
Yeah.
I love me some educators.
Yeah.
I love working with educators. It's like a part of my background, so I always get that light bulb moment when someone's like, "Oh yeah, I'm an educator. I was an educator." I was like, "Oh, that's why we're called
Yeah.
together." Yeah, for sure. So tell us a little bit more about like who specifically work with and what you love the most about what you do.
So primarily when I started, I worked with like CrossFit athletes that wanted to try some weightlifting. And
Okay.
that's kind of where we started.
Yeah.
Um, that's ventured into now I've definitely kind of gone a little more down the coaches that I work with. So now I'm like mentoring coaches programs, helping to develop them, talking about what we see as a development process in weightlifting, and then we've also kind of transitioned to kind of any explosive sport because
Okay.
as the company kind of started, it did start with a weightlifting background, but
Sure.
then we got into any kind of explosive sports. I'm a big data nerd, as you know about my programming, that
Yeah.
I like all data. So that kind of just ventured us into working with like more high school programs and any kind of explosive athlete. So like we have a bobsledder on the roster that she was on the USA circuit this past year. Um, so yeah, that's kind of where we started, but we've definitely ventured more down the coaching rabbit hole as I'm also now a USAW level one and level two coach, as I've ventured to go with you a few times, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, this would be a cool thing to do is
Yeah.
working with coaches.
Yeah. Yeah, so for our listeners who maybe aren't as familiar with the sport of weightlifting and explosive sports and all of that lingo, just real quick, tell us a little bit about the difference between like the sport of weightlifting and when you say supporting explosive sports or power sports or whatever that is.
So weightlifting itself is snatch and clean and jerk, which are two Olympic lifts, right? It's the Olympic sport of weightlifting.
Yep.
And then our explosive stuff is it's really anyone that's jumping, sprinting, running.
Sure.
Our first teams that really come on are usually football teams because they're comfortable in a weight room.
Yep.
Now we're venturing down the whole of like track and field. We get a lot of because
Yeah.
there's a direct crossover into the weightlifting sport as well. But we're also getting volleyball and baseball. So we're getting more of like really any athletic sport that
Yeah.
people are really doing.
So you're
Um,
taking your sport of weightlifting and using and strength and conditioning and using that to help other athletes get better at their sports.
yeah, and I would say we're probably starting to get more of like we have a coaching staff that understands weightlifting and coach weightlifting,
Yeah,
but we can do any kind of training
absolutely.
because we have a roster of educators, which we love, right? So I have three educators on my staff. I have a physical therapist on staff, so we really can venture into any kind of training that we're doing because we talk more about the understanding of biomechanics of what we're trying to coach for.
Yeah.
So we are taking more and more athletes from different ventures, not just our weightlifting background.
Yeah, I love that, and it makes sense too. Like to see, having seen your journey, and know that you have that educator background, who some of your staff are, your coaches are. that you are starting to make this shift to wanting to coach more coaches, right? It just makes so much sense from an alignment standpoint in terms of the educator and the big picture and the why and supporting them through all that. So that's been really exciting to kind of see you start to dabble in that a little bit more and more and like stand in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's shake things up a little bit. I want you to share something. We'll go like full on professional development teacher mode. Share a fun fact with us that you don't think people would expect to hear about you.
So, I mean, the fun fact is I have a full-time job. I have 2 kids.
Yep.
And outside of just weightlifting, I have a very large life that weightlifting is a very small part of. I think that was always interesting thing that people didn't always realize that when I would start with somebody.
Yeah.
It's like I'm a teacher. I have 2 kids.
Yeah.
I fit training in when I can,
Yeah.
and I'm lucky that I get to compete at a level I do. But I think that's usually a big thing for people is like, no, I'm a father, right? I'm a teacher, right? And I weightlift.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I bet a lot of like business owners listening to this right now can resonate with that too. Both from what you're sharing that people assume or don't assume that about you, but also from, I think it's a very easy trap for business owners to fall into of like your business, in your example, your athletics, like is just like your entire identity and personality.
Correct.
And so it's really neat to see someone who that isn't the case and kind of lead by example with that.
Yeah, it's definitely like that hole that I get pushed into is like, oh, you're an athlete. It's like, well, no, I I have a master's degree in, kinesiology.
Yeah.
It's like I wasn't, I'm an athlete because I chose to be an athlete, but I think it's very easy to get pigeonholed into this is all you do.
Yes.
And I think it's good to kind of see that like especially in the business aspect, which we've talked about a lot, is I think you need to be able to identify all of those things around you.
Absolutely.
And that this is just a piece, but now we got to figure out how we create that bigger.
Right. And we don't want that piece to control all of the other, which I think, when a lot of people come to work with me, that's usually where they're at in their journeys. They're really overwhelmed. They're like, I don't know what to do. This is taking away from my life. This is taking away from everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I love that. Okay, so let's shift into that a little bit. Before we go there, let's tell people our story.
Okay.
Maybe we'll just weave that into why you hired me and what you were wanting. But
Yeah.
let's, because we go way back.
Yeah.
I think this is a cool story for people to hear, especially like coaches and everyone is like, you never know where you are having an impact on someone's life. When you reached out to work with me, that was a really big like aha life lesson business moment for me of like, oh, right. So how did we meet? Let's talk about the beginning.
So, I mean, it was 2016 or 2017.
It might have been. Yeah.
And that was my level 1 certification for weightlifting.
For weightlifting. You were still heavily competing in CrossFit.
I went to regionals that year.
Yep.
When that was a thing in CrossFit.
Yeah. And I saw you and I was like, you should be a weightlifter.
Right.
You were not ready.
Right. And then Ryan, I think that might have been the same year Ryan from Intrepid had signed me up for an event.
Yes.
I think he just told me I'm going. I don't think it was a question. I think he's like, you are going to do this.
That tracks.
I said, okay.
Ryan. Good job, Ryan.
Yeah. And then I think over the course of the next like 2-3 years, we didn't really have touch through there. And then I took my L2 during COVID, and then I saw you at Masters Nationals.
Yeah, we ran into each other. And I had stepped away from the scene for a long time and randomly decided to pop into Masters Nationals to see people.
And I don't know, was that just after COVID?
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
It was maybe 2020, 2021.
Yeah, so like right after.
Yeah.
And then we set up to start doing some L1s at the gym.
At your gym, yeah. And it just grew from there. So why did you make that shift? Why did you hire me? And what were you wanting from that because we spent 3-4 months together in a private one-on-one coaching relationship while you were transitioning the business.
So I think we had a couple, so I think throughout our interactions of like, I think we did 2 or 3 L1s together, and then I think we did 2 L2s together out of Mawa. Yep. And then I think when you left the last one, I was like, hey, I'm expanding quickly, um, and I don't know how to manage this. And I think that was kind of, a fork in the road of like the conversation I've had with other people was, hey, either you need to stop the business where it is and just say like, this is all we're going to accomplish as a business, and I got to be okay with it, or I need to figure out how to restructure us to be able to like continue to navigate down this path.
Right.
And I think that going to you of already having the weightlifting background, being a weightlifter,
Yeah.
I think that helped me to be like, okay, you understand my space.
Yeah.
And then I think it was also like what you talked about, of like understanding that my restriction was also family.
Yeah.
And I think that was always a hard thing to communicate. It was like, no, I understand I can work more.
Right.
I don't want to.
Right.
I want to spend time with my family, right? Because like, as I said before, like I'm a father, right? And that's more of what defines me than a platform. So I think having someone that understood both of my realms as a parent and as a weightlifter
Yeah.
and helping to navigate it, I think that's why we fit so well and why we kind of went down that next venture.
Yeah. And what were you kind of hoping to get out of that time together when you first started, when you first took the leap?
So I think my original goal was clarity on, yeah, I would probably say like when I first started, it was like I wanted to have another voice to help me understand what my true choices are. And if I do choose to go down the path of like re-navigating, someone that can assist it,
Right.
understanding my backline goal.
Sure. Okay. So kind of go down that a little bit more for us. What were you,
Yeah.
like right before we started working together, like how would you describe that? What were you experiencing? What was going on? What was contributing to the overwhelm? Or the
So
anxiety?
at that point, I think I was at about 25 athletes,
Yeah. That sounds right.
25, 30 athletes.
Yep.
I had an assistant coach, Taylor Payne, who was more of help because she's a wonderful friend. I don't know if she was even an assistant coach at that time. I think she was just someone that was like, hey, I enjoy weightlifting too. I'll help you.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's kind of where we were. And I was just drowning.
Yes.
I took a national platform. That didn't go well. um, I was trying to manage all these athletes, trying to manage my own training,
Yeah.
working. I mean, my days started about 5 a.m. I'd do a training session. I'd go to work. I would then go back to the gym to either coach and then try to train again. So I was running, 5 to 8 or 9 o'clock every night,
Yeah.
and then trying to run the business
Right.
while I'm also a school teacher.
Yeah. Yeah. So what was like, how was that beginning to affect personal life, relationships?
Oh,
What was it?
I mean, relationships were minimal.
Yeah.
My wife put up with me.
Yeah.
Um, and I almost like socializing outside of my immediate family or my home was almost like difficult. So I was like, I don't want to go anywhere else.
Right.
I want to just sit home and be with my family,
Right.
which isn't a realistic thing to ask of a significant other, right? So, I mean, without my wife, I don't know what I would do half the time
Sure.
because I would get home,
Too.
right, because she's not a stay-at-home mom,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
She works as well, and like
Yeah.
I was, my ask of her was to do everything that I was neglecting. Um, which, lucky for me, she's a wonderful wife and person, and she took it,
Right.
but it wasn't fair, and I saw that.
Yeah. It wasn't
Um,
sustainable. Like long
was
term.
no, was not at all.
Yeah.
So like everything became like everything I had to do the next step for the business became an internal battle of like do I have to do this or do I want to do this?
Mm.
Right. And that became, which definitely played out on my family,
Yeah. Sure.
right? Because I was home, I think at the end of June, I think I was home maybe once a week to do bedtime.
That sounds right. That was right before we started working
And
together.
I think I did like one pickup a week if I could, didn't get pulled into another meeting.
Right.
And then Saturday, Sundays was programming. So that would be, I'd coach Saturday mornings till about noon. I'd program to about 3 or 4.
Right.
And then Sundays, I would coach again in the morning at a kids program. And then I'd
Yeah.
program till 1 or 2 o'clock.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and on top of that, she was also doing a lot of the admin for the business that you were not getting to. So she was
yeah,
also involved in the business.
yeah.
Yeah. Just not necessarily by design, just by survival.
Oh, it was 100. It was, I mean, it was even the fact of like, hey, you know, anything she could do to try to take something off my plate, she would try.
Yeah. 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 So, what, looking back to when we first started working together, can you pinpoint a moment where you had like your first big win or breakthrough? It's going back like almost a year now, but
I mean, I can. Yeah, easily. It was when we sat at the table and we slowly started to pick out like what my priorities were. We had those papers, we ripped them up,
mm-hmm,
and then we picked out like, okay, which ones will you sacrifice? Which one are priority?
mm-hmm,
And that was like kind of my first moment of like, oh, okay, this is what I want to do in this. And that was probably the first moment of clarity of like where I'm going with the business.
yeah,
Not necessarily an answer to how,
sure,
but kind of gave it a little more of like that foundation that I think,
that why,
yeah.
yeah,
Because I always had a why for like why I lift and why I train and why I do these things.
yep,
But the business wasn't, I mean, we talked about in the very beginning, it wasn't a plan.
yeah. No, it just kind of happened.
Happened.
Yeah, which is no longer the case. It's a very
No.
successful business now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Very different than what where we were that, yeah, a year ago, last June, this past,
yeah.
yeah,
It was
not even a
literal
year.
May when we started talking about getting started in July,
Yeah.
which is kind of cool to think back to now. Okay, so what as we start working together, what are some of the changes that you saw in the business that we implemented during our time together? Or some of the big shakeups?
So I think mentally for me wise, I think the first part was like, hey, start asking for help
Mm,
and then figure out what that needs to look like for either compensating and paying people
sure.
and finding out what my boundaries are.
Right.
Because I think that's even shifted for me over time, like
Mm,
since we've been working. Um, and then also finding the people that surround me what their boundaries are. Because
mm,
I would say like I'm super lucky in my staff, and you've met my whole staff now.
they're phenomenal.
Um, we're all in it because of the passion.
Sure.
So at any point, I've had the talk. Have sat down with a few of my coaches of like, hey, if this is not fun and you're not enjoying this, we need to have another conversation of like, is this work? And then how do I compensate you for it
Yeah.
or pay you for it?
Yeah.
Or are you doing this because you enjoy it? Like we was in Atlanta 2 weeks ago,
Right.
and one of my assistant coaches was like, "Oh no, I'm coming." I'm like, "Oh, I can't pay for you to go." He's like, "Huh, I'll pay." He's like, "I want to go." So that's kind of the boundary of like, okay, he's still doing this for joy,
Sure.
and luckily for me, like I was able to turn around and I paid for a slight, right? Not that he asked, not because he
Right.
wanted it, because
Because yeah.
I was able to.
Hmm. Because the business is supporting that now.
Right.
Yeah. That's really cool. That's really powerful. So, how did those changes, kind of going back to the personal life piece, because I think that's been a big theme and pattern for you
Yeah.
and a lot of the clients I work with, how did some of those changes around boundaries, your boundaries and expectations, understanding your staff's boundaries and expectations, how did they begin to affect your life outside of the business?
Well, I do pick up 3 days a week now. I'm home for 2 bedtimes a week. I am usually home one weekend day,
Yep.
usually before lunchtime.
Wow.
So I mean, like it's helped me set the here's what I want,
Yep.
and I'll always if someone can't cover a class or has to be somewhere or needs
Sure.
help with something, like
It's your
I
business.
do
Yeah.
it. I pick that up, whatever that slack needs to be done. Um, but it's given me time back. And I think that was a huge thing. It's like I needed some time back
Mm.
and then be able to make choices.
What do you mean by that? Tell us more.
And then be able to make choices of like, hey, I want to go work on something further in the business,
Mm.
or I want to just be home.
Mm.
Right? There are things that I don't need to do,
Yeah.
but I can want to do. And I think we even had like one of the docs that we'd started of like the Dan, I don't know what we called it. It was like Dan's idea doc, and it was just like just word vomit, just
Yep.
constantly every week.
Yep.
I was putting things in there, and honestly, like that was one of the easiest and silliest things. Just of like, I wasn't sleeping, right? I would have nights where I'd wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'd be like, oh, I got an idea, and I would just get up at 3 o'clock then and start doing it
Because it was there.
it's there, it's in
Yeah.
my head, and I need to put it on paper.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't do that. I don't do that as much anymore.
Sure. There's some things that we just won't be able to help ourselves with.
Yeah, no.
It's one of the biggest game changers for most of my clients, and I got that from one of my coaches because I'm such an idea person. And so if you can just, what we're talking about basically is you're taking a blank document in your phone, Microsoft Word, Google Sheets, whatever it is, Google whatever. You just anytime an idea comes up, you just dump it there.
Hmm.
And you let that build, because what that does is it takes us out of this frantic need to solve all the problems at once energy, and it also helps us unpack when we can disconnect from the ideas a little. This can be a brilliant idea, but maybe it's not our idea to run with.
Yep.
I know you've seen that a little bit, like kind of prioritizing and taking the temperature of those ideas.
Yeah, I mean, it's even I think we had a conversation, a song I wrote down very early on when we started working together over the summer, and like literally came to fruition last week, 2 weeks ago, which was like hey, I didn't need to just throw it away.
Yeah.
I'm glad I got it down
Yeah.
because now that's why we're here.
Yeah. It just wasn't the right time,
Correct.
but it was still yours for when it
Hmm.
was the right time, and you didn't lose it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Now the key
there's
is to
been a
go back
couple
and
of
check
those.
the document.
What?
The key is to go back and check the document every once in a while.
Oh, I'm always on it.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always somewhere now. I mean, we launched the blog today. I think I wrote that down.
Yeah,
I don't
we
know.
did our VIP day.
Yeah. Was this is something that I should do? I should start writing a blog and have some
Yeah.
content and,
Yeah.
give some things away during the content.
Yeah. Provide value, just to provide value for people and education, because you're an educator at heart.
Yep.
I mean, and I know we have very similar coaching philosophies, but like, I think the best coaches out there are educators and have that like inherent. Now you can define educator however you choose. I'm not just talking about like our public school system educators, but
100%. Yeah.
inherently educators like want to share knowledge and wisdom and experience and lessons, and the most impactful coaches I've experienced and witnessed have been educators.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we've kind of referenced this a little bit, but just to like paint the picture a little bit for my listeners, you talked about sitting at the table together. I mentioned the VIP day. In most of my one-on-one work, my highest level one-on-one offering, we start with an in-person strategy day. You did one of those. That's how we
Hmm.
kicked off. That's where we did that activity that you talked about earlier in the episode. What was your experience there? What was that like for you?
It's funny. It's like I feel like when we sit down, we're like, hey, we're gonna spend a day. I'm like, a whole day,
You're
Cait?
like,
I'm like,
what?
do you know how
I
much
don't
time I
know.
don't have right now?
It's a real concern for people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But then I was like, oh wait, the day's over. And it was so fast. And I feel like we got so much into it.
So much done. So much done.
Um, but it was funny. It was like starting that way. It was like, okay, we're going to spend the whole day and we're going to try to define what our next steps are.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm what's your 5-year plan? My wife yells at me, right? What's your 5-year plan? So, and that's me in my head. Is like, okay, we're going to take this day. And I'm like, and I'm ready to like, let's set the world ablaze, right? Like, let's do the whole thing now. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that was a lot of like I think it gave me the foundation for those steps. And I think that's what the day was for me. I think it laid that groundwork that I needed to go home and do work on
Yeah.
me and figure out what that needs to look like.
Yeah. I love that. So I bet our listeners are curious, is your wife, Stephanie, is she still in the business?
No, she's not. No, she's no longer working.
We love
As
that
she,
for her.
it's fantastic, but she likes to tell people I fired her. Yeah.
Stephanie, don't you dare blame that on me. I know you can. I think it's a good
No,
thing.
no, no, no. It's just she enjoys saying it that way. She's like, I was fired from the business. Um, but no, it's been great for both of us,
Yeah, I can
right? And
imagine.
not to overshare, but like there were some mornings where it was like, she's like, Dan, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. You can't bring up something that you need me to do right now.
Yeah,
And that's what it was, right? Because that's my
right.
brain,
Yeah, yep,
right? Never quiets down. So
yep, yep.
if I'm going, right, for her, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. For me, I could have been up for 3, 4 hours already, starting on something,
Right, your brain has been going for
just
hours.
going.
Yeah, yeah,
And, I think that separation has helped a lot,
yeah.
just home life wise. I think I get to be husband, father at
Present.
home.
Yeah, yeah. I always find like couple dynamics as it relates to business fascinating because typically we see certain patterns of like the person who's in
Hmm.
the business, and I know you and I resonate a lot with how we process and operate. And it's always great to have that anchor person that's different, and that's a lot on them and not always fair,
Yeah,
right? And sometimes we need to be able to create that healthy separation so that we can show up as partner, and that's enough. That's
because
enough.
now it's for me, it's like we had the conversation of like, hey, can I talk business with you for a second, just for your ideas?
Yeah,
And that's great because now she's in a position that like she can give a personal opinion and then remove herself.
that's it. And you ask for
And
permission first.
always,
Huge
always
boundary,
now,
right? Always now. Yeah.
always now.
And that's a big boundary thing, right?
Yeah,
That's huge. That's huge. I don't think people realize the ripple out that has on your relationship and those dynamics.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so what was something that kind of surprised you from our work together? Something that you learned, something unexpected, something that you created that you have now because of our time together?
I mean, I would say a lot of like where we are in the growth
Hmm.
because not I don't know if surprise is the right word. I think it was the ability to expand.
Okay.
And I think it was more of I didn't see the full vision
Mm.
until we started
Mm-hmm.
of the, hey, this person can help you. Hey, this person can help you.
Yeah.
And, now we're at 5 coaches and a huge staff.
Yeah.
And I think that was something that I wasn't prepared for, was just hey, you can be here, right? We can get to this step, and now you're only taking this athlete, and then everyone else can take these, and then you
Yes.
can help them manage day to day,
Right.
right? So, I mean, in less than a year, we doubled, right? Like we were at 25, 30, and we're 60 and having calls every week.
But you didn't take all the, because when we first started together, you were the main coach for all of the athletes.
Correct.
So 25 to 30 athletes on top of being dad, teacher, competing at a really high level
Yeah,
yourself as an athlete, all of the things,
yeah,
husband, all of the things. So then we together created a new system of
yeah,
staff and kind of identified where those gaps were and who you actually already had around you that could step in and take. And so now you've doubled since that.
yeah. We're at I think we're about 60. Yeah. And it wasn't, and I didn't take on more work. And I think that was the biggest
Oh,
thing.
you got rid of work.
Yeah. And we also hired an
You
assistant.
shifted your work.
Right.
And you also, sorry, I cut you off there.
No, no, I said we also hired the assistant.
You also have virtual assistant, right?
Right. So that, I mean, that's, I don't think I realized how much work I was doing that I had no reason to be doing.
Yeah.
And I think it also gave me the opportunity, and we talked about this a lot, was
Yes.
like, hey, with this time, now you can take it and build something.
Right. Now it becomes
Right.
sustainable. It's scalable. I think the hot word right now in the industry or online business and all that is scalability.
Yeah.
But often the piece that is missing from that is to be successfully scalable, it also has to be sustainable for the people involved and
Right.
the system involved. And that was a lot of what we did, was identifying the people and a lot of systems creation. I wouldn't even say cleanup. It was just a lot of systems creation.
Yeah, because this wasn't a business. I started with an idea and it was fun, and then I'm like, oh my God, I'm not having fun. What do we need to do?
Mm-hmm.
And then we brought in people around me who, I think it was almost funny because we talked about it a few times. Like, I didn't realize right away the people that I had,
Yeah.
and then just even like their full commitment
Yeah.
almost immediately
Right.
of, yeah, whatever you need. Right. So I got lucky with those people that were around me.
Yes, and let's be honest here.
Yeah.
Let's give credit where credit's due. You got lucky because you have amazing people around you, but you also, before even all of this, had already created a really phenomenal culture and community.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
We're very lucky
great
with who we have.
people yes, you're very lucky, and you created something really beautiful, right?
Yeah.
Like, we got to give you some credit here.
Yeah, it's such a great community. It really is. Like, we do these events now. Joe's idea was we should do like meetups every quarter, and we do, and we have 30, 40 people that show up that are driving 3, 4, 5 hours to just
Because
come.
most of
Like,
your athletes are remote, virtual, correct?
yeah,
What
we have
percentage now, you would say?
we're about 60% online.
Okay.
40 are now about 40% are now in person.
Wow,
We're
so that's a shift too.
Yeah, and we'll look at some more. We're looking at some a new thing in the works is we have an affiliate program that's going to be pushing out soon.
Fantastic.
So that's going to shake up our in-person a little bit, because I think
Yeah.
the in-person opportunity I think is important.
Yes.
So I think being able to reach and branch out a little further, and I also think it's going to help me mentor coaches,
Right.
because that's going to be a large part of the affiliate program is,
Right.
you're going to get a mentor, right? We're going to mentor a coach. We're going to help you develop,
Right.
a barbell club inside your facility.
Right.
And then if you have athletes that are choosing to compete at a high level, we're going to take them to compete with us, right? We have that option for you. Right? You don't need to be where I was when I started, and I had 3 athletes that are like, "Hey, we should go to nationals," and I'm like, "Well, I don't have $5,000."
Right. Oh yeah, no joke. Yes.
Yeah, I mean we're looking at right now to book Colorado Springs, and it's like, this is an expensive trip,
Yep. This is fundraising
but
time.
but that's where our club is, right? Our club can do that. Our club can handle that.
Yeah.
Because of what we built out.
That's it. That's it. Love that. Okay. If anyone listening is on the fence and thinking about hiring me, there's often a lot of fears involved. I know we've both been there when hiring out coaches and making that big investment. It's really scary. A lot of stuff comes up. You and I are both on the other side of it and both know how valuable it is. But what would you tell them if there's people listening that are kind of on the fence, as someone who's gone through it? What would you share with them?
I think I would tell them, like, start where you're comfortable, in the sense of working with you.
Yep.
And have the time to like have the conversation, but then be able to reflect of the understanding of like, understand the value of what you're looking for. Right? For me, I don't think it was a financial value. I think it's just where we happen to be now.
Right.
But I think it was a time value.
Yeah.
Right? I couldn't pay anybody enough to get time back.
Right.
And I think if people get so locked in on like, what's the number of like, what does this cost me?
Right.
I think you lose the venture of the journey of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right? Especially for someone who's like a passion person, right? I'm passionate about training people. I'm passionate about the sport of weightlifting. I'm passionate about, helping people achieve their goals.
Right.
And I think I couldn't put a value on that to then want my time back. So I think that was kind of be my like biggest push of like, hey, like, find your value.
You mean like
right?
what's important to them?
What's important to you, right? What do you value on your
Right.
day to day?
Right.
and then go down your navigation of like, hey, now how do I fund this? How do we pay for it?
Right.
But I think it's like we're never gonna get the people that are like, oh, it could be cool,
Yeah.
right? Even in like my own world, right, in the business world of like training, like
Yeah.
I'm sorry if you're like, hey, this could be cool,
Yeah. Not the right.
probably the right person,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
This isn't the right fit.
Sure.
But if you can come to me like, here's my value, here's my goal,
Yeah.
how can we get there,
Right.
right? Because having the ideas is great, but if you don't have the time to commit to it and you don't have the direction, you're just spinning your wheels and you're losing things along the way,
Right.
which is where I was, right? Like I was
Right.
losing time.
So you're saying our work together helped you get all of that back that you
Oh yeah,
valued but couldn't figure out. I just want to make
yeah,
sure. Okay.
yeah. I couldn't get. I think what I was kind of saying was like I valued my time more than anything else, right? Time with family, time with friends, time with my wife, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think you couldn't put a dollar value on that.
Mm.
So I think it had to me like step back and be like, okay, this is what I want out of it. I think what made it a little bit easier for me wasn't like, hey, I'm gonna pay Cait and then I need to make 15 grand. Right? That was never my focus.
Sure. Sure.
Did it help? Yeah, but
Yeah.
wasn't
Did
the
you make
intent.
money? Yeah, you did.
Right?
Good.
It
Good.
wasn't the intent of what I went for, right?
Right. That's not why
I
you did it.
I wanted the scalability,
Yep.
but I wanted time,
Yeah.
and I wasn't willing to trade one for the other.
Mm. Mm. Yes. Okay.
And I think that would be like my biggest thing of like, hey, if you're looking to either scale or restructure what you're doing,
Yeah.
then always ask for help.
Yeah. For sure. Help is like the game changer that we all forget about, right? It's this, just like the idea document, it's the simple thing, it's the simplest answer on the table, but it's often the thing that we all like skip right over for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Okay, anything else you would like to share with the listeners? Any last words of wisdom? Anything? Anything we missed?
I think we covered a lot of like our story and our
Yeah.
startup of where we are and how we got here.
Yeah.
Um, no, I'm very grateful for, what we did in the course of only 3 months, which is always a crazy thing that we talk about,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, because we did a condensed, because you were a teacher, so we had to take advantage of that summer window.
So, it's crazy to think about what we did in just that 3 month time span and, and where we turned around and got to now. So just appreciative of like everything we kind of did along the journey.
Likewise, I'm appreciative of the trust and that you asked, right? That was the
Yeah.
first question, that you asked for the help, and yeah, that's really awesome. Anything exciting that you have going on? You mentioned a new blog, but anything that you want our listeners to know about or check out?
So we do have our new blog. We are also running our own in-house meet coming up just for tri-state athletes only. So if you want to be a part of it, you can always reach out to us. We're looking to create some more content coming out with some coaching instruction, some coaching help, and mentor programs. So, helping coaches to help design themselves and realize what it means to truly be a coach.
Sure. Yeah, because there's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah.
I think a lot more than people in like that online business world realize.
Yeah, there's no cookie cutter template.
No, no magic pill.
No, no
No quick
magic pill.
fix, coach.
No, no. Just as Taylor says, just lots of back squats.
Just lots of back squats. That is the same in the business coaching world too. Like
Yeah, yeah,
maybe even lots of back squats is one of the answers because
yeah.
it's pressing. But that is the one thing that has followed me. There is no magic pill. There is no quick fix.
No,
A lot of clarity and strategy and getting really honest with yourself, and from there we go.
yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for being my
Thank you.
first guest.
I'm super excited. I can't wait for it to come and post and
I know. I
yeah,
think it's going to be really funny too, and we've talked about this. So many when I worked in athletics, weightlifting, college strength conditioning, all that, a lot of the teams I worked with were male teams, just
Yeah.
how it played out, and maybe some of my personality. But in this version of season of my business, a lot of my clients are women, and I don't, outside of my mastermind for mom business owners, I don't market just to women, but I think because a lot of my marketing has to do with my own story, a lot of my clients are women, and a lot of people assume I only work with women. So I'm
Yeah.
always excited when we like chat publicly, because it's like, oh, right? Like it's
Yeah.
a lot of the same parallels and themes that come up, right? Parenthood, partner dynamics, boundaries, all of the things.
Yeah. Because, we're all parents, right? Some of us are parents, some of us are significant others. It's still
Yep. Some of
same
us are
name of the game.
caretakers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Well, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so excited, and I can't wait to see where TriState goes next.
Looking forward to it.
All right.